Hi guys. I'm going to read The Wreck of the Zeypher. This is Chris von Allsburg. As you know, he's one of my favorite illustrators and storybook writers. There we go. Starting off the picture of this. Looks like there's a guy over here looking at a wrecked ship. Once, while traveling along the seashore, I stopped at a small fishing village. After eating lunch, I decided to take a walk. I followed a path out of the village, uphill to some cliffs high above the sea. At the edge of these cliffs was a most unusual sight, the wreck of a small sailboat. An old man was sitting among the broken timbers, smoking a pipe. He seemed to be reading my mind when he said, "Odd, isn't it?" An old man was sitting among the broken... Oh, sorry. "Yes," I answered. "How did it get here?" "Waves carried it up during a storm." "Really?" I said. "It doesn't seem the waves could ever get that high." The old man smiled. "Well, there's another story, too." He invited me to have a seat and listen to the strange tale. "In our village, years ago," he said, "there was a boy who could sail a boat better than any man in the harbor. He could find a breeze over the flattest sea. When dark clouds kept other boats at anchor, the boy would set sail ready to prove to the villagers, to the sea itself, how great a sailor he was." You see the little boy right there. I don't think I would be in a boat by myself. There we go. One morning, under an ominous sky, he prepared to take his boat, the Zeypher, out to sea. A fisherman warned the boy to stay in port. Already a strong wind was blowing. "I'm not afraid," the boy said, "because I'm the greatest sailor there is." The fisherman pointed to a seagull gliding overhead. There's the only sailor who can go out on a day like this." The boy just laughed as he hoisted his sails into the blustery wind. Blustery, I like the word ominous. Makes me think like darkness, spooky. The wind whistled in the rigging of the Zeypher, pounded her way through the water. The sky grew black and the waves rose up like mountains. The boy struggled to keep his boat from going over. Suddenly, a gust of wind caught the sail. The boom swung around and hit the boy's head. He fell into the cockpit floor and did not move. So I believe that's the boom, like that thing that kind of swishes the sail back and forth. I'm not a sailor, so I'm not 100% accurate on that. When the boy opened his eyes, he found himself lying on a beach. The Zeypher rested behind him, carried there by the storm. The boat was far from the water's edge. The tide would not carry it back to sea, and the boy set out to look for help. He walked for a long time and was surprised that he didn't recognize the shoreline. He climbed a hill, expecting to see something familiar, but what he saw instead was strange and an unbelievable sight. Before him were two boats sailing high above the water. Astonished, he watched them glide by. Then a third sailed past, towing the Zeypher. The boats entered a bay that was bordered by a large village. There they left the Zeypher. Interesting. The boy made his way down to the harbor, to the dock where his boat was tied. He met a sailor who smiled when he saw the boy. Pointing to his boat, he asked, "Yours?" The boy nodded. The sailor said they almost never saw strangers on their island. It was surrounded by treacherous reef. The Zeypher must have been carried over the reef by the storm. He told the boy that later they would take him and his boat back over the reef, but the boy said he would not leave until he learned to sail above the waves. The sailor told him it took years to learn to sail like that. Besides, he said, "Your boat does not have the right sails." The boy insisted. He pleaded with the sailor. Finally, the sailor said he would teach him if the boy promised to leave the next morning. The boy agreed. The sailor went to a shed and got a new set of sails. All afternoon they sailed back and forth across the bay. Sometimes the sailor took the tiller and the boat would magically begin to lift out of the water. But when the boy tried, he could not catch the wind that made boats fly. When the sun went down, they went back to the harbor. They dropped anchor, and a fisherman rowed them to shore. In the morning, the sailor said, "We'll put your own sails back on the Zeypher and send you home." He took the boy to his house, and the sailor's wife fed them oyster stew. I wonder what the trick is. After dinner, The sailor played a song. The song was about a man named Samuel Blue, who long ago tried to sail his boat over land and crash. For the wind o'er land's near steady nor true, and all the men that sail there meet Samuel Blue. When he was done with his song, the sailor sent the boy to bed, but the boy could not sleep. He knew he could fly his boat if he had another chance. He waited until the sailor and his wife were asleep. Then he quietly dressed and went to the harbor. As he rowed out to his boat, the boy felt the light evening wind grow stronger and colder. Ooh, I wonder. Under a full moon, you can kind of see the hint of the moon behind the boat there, he sailed his boat into the bay. He tried to remember everything the sailor had told him. He tried to feed the wind, pulling his boat forward, lifting it up. Then suddenly, the boy left the Zeypher. He felt his boat begin to shake. The sound of water rushing past the hull grew louder. The air filled with spray as the boat sliced through the waves. The boy slowly began to lift, higher and higher. The Zeypher rose out of the water, then finally broke free. The sound of rushing water stopped. There was only the sound of wind in the sails. The Zeypher was flying. Using the stars to guide him, the boy set a course for home. The wind blew very hard, churning the sea below, but that did not matter to the Zeypher as she glided through the night sky. When clouds blocked the boy's view of the stars, he trimmed the sails and climbed higher. Surely the men of the island never dared fly so high. Now the boy was certain he was truly the greatest sailor of all. I'm starting to make a prediction about that busted up boat. He steered well. Before the night was over, he saw the moonlight spire of the church at the edge of his village. As he drew closer to land, an idea took hold of him. He would sail over the village and ring the Zephyrs' bell. Then everyone would see him and know that he was the greatest sailor. He flew over tree-topped cliffs of the shore, but as he reached the church, the Zephyr began to fall. Uh-oh. The wind had shifted. The boy pulled as hard as he could on the tiller, but it did no good. The wind shifted again. He steered for the open sea, but the trees at the cliff's edge stood between him and the water. At first there was just the rustle of leaves brushing the hull. Then the air was filled with sound of breaking branches and ripping sails. The boat fell to the ground, and here she sits today. A remarkable tale, I said, as the old man stopped to relight his pipe. What happened to the boy? He broke his leg that night. Of course, no one believed a story about flying boats. It was easier for them to believe that he was lost in the storm and thrown up here by the waves. The old man laughed. No, sir, the boy never amounted to much. People thought he was crazy. He just took odd jobs around the harbor. Most of the time he was out sailing, searching for that island and a new set of sails. A light breeze blew through the trees. The old man looked up. Wind coming. He said, I've got some sailing to do. He picked up a cane, and I watched as he limped slowly toward the harbor. So, I'm guessing the old man was the little boy. All right, guys, that's my read aloud for today. I'll post another one tomorrow. Bye.